All right. I am here with Shauna from War on Women. Thank you for joining me here today, Shauna.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Why don't you just, you are the singer in War on Women. Why don't you introduce the rest of the band who isn't here and just give us a little history on the band?
Sure. We started in 2010. We're from Baltimore, Maryland. And we've got Brooks and Sue and Dave and Jenarchy in the band. So a five-piece punk band.
And this is your third album. The new album is Wonderful Hell, and this is your first album with this current lineup.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, so and it came out, I think, at the end of October.
Uh-huh. Yeah, on Bridge 9 Records, which is based out of Boston. And yeah, it was really important to us to get this album out this year. We weren't doing anything else, obviously. So we thought the least we can do is finish this record and get people some new music to listen to.
Were you recording this during the? Have you been recording this during the pandemic, or
We
did you have?
actually, yeah, we started before COVID hit.
Mhm.
And by the time people were talking lockdown and our tours were getting canceled, we were done with all the basic tracks. And so all that was left is a couple overdubs, but vocals and then mixing and mastering. And all of those things can be done in isolation. Literally in an isolation booth is where I was doing vocals. So it took a little planning, but then we were able to just go ahead and finish the album in lockdown. So we felt very lucky that we had already finished all the basic tracks.
So one of the things I've noticed on this particular album is you guys are definitely a hardcore punk band, and this album, it seems like, kind of without kind of softens a little bit of the corners, has a little bit more of a punk element than a hardcore element to it.
Mm.
And I was reading that you recorded this album at Magpie Studios with Jay Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, do you feel like that when I read that, it kind of clicked in my mind that it does have a little bit of that Jay Robbins sound for those
Well,
of us that listen to a lot of Jay Robbins.
yeah, and everyone should if they don't already, but I'm about to blow your mind, Craig. Every record we've ever recorded has been recorded at Magpie Cage
Oh,
Studios.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there.
And so it was certainly a conscious choice I think soften those edges is a great phrase to use, because we're not we certainly haven't lost any of our anger or
Right.
frustration. But we thought, why not make a couple moments a little more palatable, easy to listen to, for people that maybe don't listen to a lot of hardcore punk.
Right, and I think it really works on this album because, as you mentioned, the topics of the song are still very much your topics, everything we've come to expect from War on Women, and to a certain extent, maybe even more given the current climate that we're in. But yeah, it definitely kind of it. I don't want to say easier to listen to, but it's more hooky or slightly more melodic, but still very very much a punk rock record, and still
Yeah.
very much a War on Women record.
Yeah, good. I mean, that's the balance, right? We never want to make the same record over and over again. And this kind of record was always in us to make. It's just not how we started the band. But, after a while, you just don't want to repeat yourself. So you give yourself a different kind of challenge. And that's what we did.
And the band has always been very much, I don't want to say political, but or maybe even activist. I don't think those are the correct terms, but even very much a band that strives to fight for those that maybe don't have a voice, and those that are, don't have, you know, I guess that's the best term I have at the moment. And given the current climate, just the mood in the country, I guess, has it been easier to write those lyrics, or maybe more frustrating at the same time?
It's not even about writing those kinds of lyrics in particular. It's kind of been a challenge to be creative, period. I think a lot of people are struggling right now, not only with finances, Maybe your job is in question, or you haven't been able to go to work, or it's just different, or you're caring for children 24/7, and you used to be able to send them to school. Everyone's lives is a little different this year, right? And so couple that with, for me, I've been lucky enough to make a little money working at home. And so I've stayed home so I could keep other people safe. And so you're isolating yourself, and that does take a toll after some time. So you've got your isolation, if you're keeping everybody else safe, you've got financial worries, you've got the division in the country, it just kind of makes it hard for me at least, to have that outlet be cathartic. Instead, I find myself just wanting to escape into books and bad TV, But I think that that's honestly a really common theme on this record. I was starting to feel some of those feelings the last few years, and I think that you can hear that on this album, and it just happens to still ring true, or even ring true for more people by the time we got to release it.
Right. And yeah, it kind of is, I guess maybe, a lot of people might think that it's, with the mood in the country and the division, it might make it easier it gives you more topics maybe, or make it easier, but I can kind of hear that maybe it becomes more difficult to be creative and say something new then on top of that,
yeah.
which I think.
Yeah, because I don't want to bore myself, let alone anyone listening. And so how do you keep up that energy and keep it interesting? And so I certainly find inspiration in a lot of different places. I let inspiration come to me however it comes to me, without judgment. And sometimes that means I find a topic and I dive deep into it. Sometimes that means I'm summarizing a book I just read that I think is cool. Sometimes it means I'm grabbing all these little lines in my lyric book and smashing them together and hoping that they make sense when I'm done with it. And frankly, after any album that I release, I usually take a little break from songwriting, right? To kind of just reset. And so that is definitely in effect right now, because it just seems kind of hard to be creative, period.
Yeah, I've talking to other artists during the lockdown and the pandemic, I've heard that same thing, that it's been very difficult just through the isolation and the pressures that the world have put on everyone. It's been very difficult to be creative during this. Were you writing the lyrics during lockdown? You had mentioned you were tracking vocals, but were the lyrics already there? Or?
90% of the album was already done before we went into the studio. I always strive for 100%, but I never fully get there. So there was really just one song, the song Seeds, that I just kept putting to the end. It just wasn't coming easy to me. So I just kept putting it to the end, and I just didn't really have a lot for it. And so I was finishing that while we were recording. And so that's actually the only song on the album that has any sort of reference or acknowledgement of a global pandemic.
Okay. And you mentioned jamming all sorts of lyrics into your lyric book, and I want to mention that when I was listening to Aqua Tofana, in the liner notes that you have on Bandcamp, you reference pulling lyrics from Shellac's Prayer to God. Yeah. And we can't specifically quote that entire line here, but it was really cool to read that, because that line definitely jumped out at me as a music nerd. That particular line jumps out to me from that song, that was very cool from my point to read that in the lyrics that
that I did it on purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I love about just art, and the big umbrella of art is how reciprocal it is, and how artists of different mediums feed off each other and inspire each other and interpret each other. And I just think it's a really beautiful thing. And so I don't know if this has to do with, laziness on my part, but I never have a problem with getting inspiration from other artists and musicians, and kind of putting my own spin on it and presenting it in a different way. And so hopefully I've done that, and any shellac fans that listen to Aqua Tofana aren't pissed off at me.
Oh no, I wouldn't think that. It's just, like you kind of hear these things and then it triggers this other thought, and yeah, it's just really cool that it it was intentional and not just casual.
Yeah.
So so with the new band and the new members, as you were putting this, did you get to tour with the new members or with this current lineup at all?
Yeah. Yeah. I got to tell you, like, the reason we made that very clear in our press releases for this album is that, like, we've been a band for 10 years. We've had lineup changes the whole time because we're of a certain age. Touring is not for everyone and not forever. And sometimes things just don't work out. There's a million reasons why the same 5 people can't be in a band 10 years later, right? Especially because we're not like Coldplay. We're not making tons of money. It's not easy to do this. So with different lineup changes, and then also sometimes we get help from, we get fill-ins. Someone has a real job, they got to stay behind, they can't go on tour, so we get fill-ins, and that kind of thing happens all the time. So I think after years of people just not knowing who is in the band for real, we just wanted to make it clear, this is the band right now. Like, no need to use those old photos. Like,
right.
Let's give credit where credit's due. This is who's on this album. So yeah, we've had this lineup since January 2019. We toured a lot in that last year, and I'm just so glad that we got that chance to just tour relentlessly in 2019, because we really thought we'd be doing the same thing this year. But it made it easier to make a record with this particular lineup because we all, we knew each other's vibes already, right? Like, we already had a relationship musically.
So, and and on the Bandcamp page, you also are, in addition to the music that you can pick up, you can also order cross stitch patterns that are related to the album. So I wanted to ask you about those.
Well, that's my hobby. That's my one thing that I can do. I started cross stitching a couple years ago. I realized that in the van when we're on tour, which again is like half my life being on tour normally, I can get car sick if I read. It's hard to have a long attention span. There's always maybe a conversation starts, or we have to stop for gas, or you're just tired or hungover, whatever. And so it's just really difficult to do anything other than like scroll on your phone. And I just wanted to stop that cycle of being constantly connected. I felt like it was becoming detrimental to my well-being. Do you know what I mean? And just bad for my eyes in a moving vehicle. So I wanted something to do with my hands that would prevent me from scrolling on my phone. And cross stitching is this awesome, super easy thing that anyone can do. And it's also really small. Like, you don't need a ton of supplies. I could do it in a moving van and only stick myself a couple times and just make, fun little things that then I could sell at the merch table for like $5. And so with it being such a big hobby of mine the last couple of years, I wanted to do something band related. So I worked up a pattern to actually stitch up our band. It's like us as people in cross stitch form. It looks very pixelated, like old school video games. And then once I was really excited about that, I thought, well, maybe I could get someone that's way better than me to design something really beautiful and intricate. So there's actually 3 levels of cross stitch designs on Bandcamp merch. Can you tell I'm so excited? I'm so excited talking about it. I just love cross stitching. I should really stop.
No, that's really cool. And I think that's, so you worked with Good Life Farms to put up the pattern. So you have a pattern for the cover to Wonderful Hell, your new album.
Yeah.
and then a pattern for lyrics to cut them all, as well as you mentioned, the band, the band cross stitch.
Yeah, you can see if anyone's watching the video, you can see it framed on my bookshelf behind me. I have cross stitched. I came up with that design, and then I got it on a like holiday sweatshirt that we're selling on shirtkiller.com. So we have a nice red sweater with us. I don't know. It's just cute. And with a band name like War on Women, you don't do cute a lot. So it's a nice treat.
No, absolutely. So some of the other things that you've been doing outside of or I guess with the band or outside of the band were you were on 2 Minutes to Late Night.
Yeah, we've done that a lot. And especially
say, you've been on the COVID, their COVID cover, or during the pandemic, you've been on a number of their covers that they've done.
Yeah, it's like they know that I'm at home, not really doing much or something. Yeah, I always really like the opportunity to just sing a random song and film something funny and work with the 2 Minutes to Late Night crew. I think, and it's just a fun thing to do. And so we actually have another one that's going to come out for the holiday. There is a festival in Gainesville, Florida. It's a big punk and hardcore festival called The Fest. And they're doing a live stream event, I think on the 24th of December, but don't quote me on that. And they're just, bands are submitting like, Christmas videos, holiday videos, Hanukkah videos, just fun stuff. And so I'm working with the 2 Minutes to Late Night people to do a holiday song on that too. So check that out.
So do they send you a number of songs, or they're just saying, hey, we're doing this, you were, I think, on one of the Van Halen covers that they did, and they said, hey, we're doing this Van Halen cover. Are you interested?
Yeah, it's usually like, hey, can you put down some vocals like in the next few days? We need to finish this. So yeah, not like a real not a lot of planning necessarily, but that makes it cute.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I think we just lost that last part, but I think it's fine. Okay. So the other thing, one of my colleagues mentioned, you also have, the last time you were on the show, we talked about your Safer Spaces, the pamphlet that you wrote, and he mentioned to me, and I haven't had a chance to look into this, but you have, there's a documentary on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, it just got put up on Amazon Prime recently. Like I was just told about it via text this morning. So
oh really? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just called Safer Spaces. So you can search for that or Shauna Potter on Amazon and watch the short documentary. That again, it kind of represents everyone's struggles this year. This documentary maker was going to submit this doc to festivals and do a circuit and maybe do events, and maybe I would get to go, and that just got derailed. And so he was able to put it online, submit it to a few online festivals, and then now we're just hosting it on Amazon, so everybody has a chance to watch it.
That's really cool. So back on the band, the new album, War on Women's new album, is titled Wonderful Hell, came out on Bridge 9 Records back in October. It's available at waronwomen.bandcamp.com. Have you guys, you mentioned that you've kind of taken a break from songwriting, but it sounds like the band's been a little bit active. You guys have been you're doing a recording for the fest. Have you, I guess.
Yeah, but it's not the full band. It's all remote. It's still in isolation. Okay. Yeah, the band has not gotten together since we left the studio. Yeah, so there's no rehearsals. We're just staying away from each other so that we can keep each other safe, right, and come together sooner.
Yeah, and that has to be really hard as a and you guys are a touring band, during this time, and trying to stay connected. And then I guess you mentioned you haven't been writing music, but you released this during the pandemic, and hopefully you'll get to tour on it once it's safe to do so?
I'm crossing my fingers.
Right.
I am. I mean, and to be clear, I have no idea what the rest of the band is doing.
Okay.
I'm just not writing lyrics,
Right.
but everybody else is pretty prolific and, plays all the time. But I'm like, whatever.
So what is the songwriting process like then in the band? Are they bringing ideas together as a band, and then you're layering lyrics on top of that?
It varies actually, which I think helps contribute to, a more interesting album in the end, right? And so sometimes someone has a riff and then we all get together and we expand on it. Sometimes someone has a full song and they're like, it's kind of done already. And everyone's like, yeah, you're right. It's kind of done. Let's just put our spin on it. And sometimes I'll come up with a riff that I then show to Brooks and I say, okay, but make it a little more metal, because I'm actually not very fast. I'm not a very fast guitar player. Or I'll have an idea and I'll just hum it to him and I'm like, can you play this? Whatever. And yeah, so it works in a lot of different ways. Sometimes Brooks actually has a melody for me already in mind. He's like, I wrote this riff and I can already hear what should go there, and he'll hum a melody and I'll be like, okay, let me figure out if I can work that out. So it's kind of fun. We're always challenging each other.
Oh, all right. So again, the new album by War on Women is Wonderful Hell. I guess we'll hopefully see you at some point in the future when it's safe for you to get out.
I hope so. And, in the meantime, I have a podcast called But Her Lyrics. So look up But Her Lyrics and you can join me as I take a deep dive into the meaning and the politics behind every song off the new album, Wonderful Hell. I do band interviews, I bring in experts, and we just talk about the songs. So until we can get together in person, you can put me in your headphones.
Well, that's really excellent. That's very cool because, I think that takes what you did on Capture the Flag, that you put together a workbook for.
Yeah, it just like expands it. Yeah,
right, exactly.
Just like kind of same thing, but different format, expands it. Yeah. And so, I have a Patreon. If anyone's interested in supporting me doing this podcast, just look me up. It's Shauna Potter, Shauna with a W, Potter like Harry. And you can donate $1 a month, and that would help me keep this going while I don't really have another job until I can play live again.
Okay, so the podcast is But Her Lyrics, and again, War on Women is at waronwomen.bandcamp.com, and I'm sure you're up on all the streaming platforms as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we'll play another couple of tunes.
Right. Cool. Go listen, everybody. Yeah, thanks, Craig.